I feel like I look really pale right now. Why do I look so pale?
You.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah.
Like, no. But yeah. Oh my gosh, but I had such a cool so on the teaching thing I do, it was such a good session with this woman, but she came in and she spoke to us about like decolonizing the curriculum.
Decolonization. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And she was just such an amazing like speaker, and like she gave so much history, well, like Black history behind like Liverpool and like slavery and things like that. And it was just so interesting to hear about even things like, because I'm, you know me, I'm really, really bad at like history, at like politics. I'm awful. So I also apologize if I say anything wrong when I'm talking about this.
No.
But yeah, so she was talking about like how we as in like Britain, what do they call it? British Empire, were like asking for, you know, the other countries that they'd kind of conquered to like help out in the war and so on. And so a lot of kind of Black and like Caribbean like men would come across and fight in the wars for us. But she was saying how there is like no documentation, or like there's no representation like in the news or anything when you're talking about like the war.
Isn't that the Windrush generation?
I think so, yeah.
That's crazy.
And she then kind of likened it, or kind of paralleled it to, so after the war, when basically all of the Black men that had come over were like told, you can't have any of the jobs, like there are jobs, and there were riots and like white people standing outside of hotels like wanting to harm Black people basically. But then she was saying how this kind of came full circle, or not full circle, but like it hasn't stopped. So if you think about last year, do you remember the riots like with like asylum seekers, so riots against asylum seekers and things like that were happening in the UK. So I thought that was really interesting. And she spoke a lot as well around like sanitization of like language around these topics. So anyway,
gotta make the whites feel more comfortable.
Yeah, it honestly. So it was super inspiring. So she's called Chantel Lunt. And I think she's also like an activist, and I think she does some stuff with politics. I'm definitely not giving her the justice she requires. Yeah, it was like so engrossing though. She was basically like just telling you like stories from history. And then she would like engage, you know, in talking with us, but it was mostly just her just telling us about the history, and it was so interesting.
But it's interesting how you said it like cycles back and it never has gone away, because that's kind of what we'll talk about a little bit in this as well. So it all seems to kind of just like link in. There's always backlash to people making steps forward.
So many similarities, even if you think about, so like the, again, like sanitization of like language, like minimizing like experiences, like not being seen, like not being heard about like specific needs. She spoke a little bit around like the, I don't know, stereotype, but is it stereotype?
Anyway,
the false belief that like Black people don't feel pain or as much pain.
RFK Jr. just said that Black people, in his Senate hearing that got him confirmed into Senate, said that Black people shouldn't have the same vaccine schedule as white people. Like, this is the level of stupidity we're dealing with. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But you would have loved it because near the beginning she just put a huge picture of Donald Trump up on the screen, and there were like 4 different screens like all around the room, so Donald Trump was just like everywhere.
Ew, gross.
But then she was like saying, she was basically saying like, why is this a problem, and just kind of talking about
cool.
the DEI stuff in like America, and how is probably going to come over here. And
that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. What did she say? She said like, when America sneezes, that England catches a cold or something.
That's a good way of framing it.
It's like, no.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm really worried about. Like Elon's trying to align himself with whatchamacallit, Farage. Trump has his eyes on the NHS. It's like it's really scary. And so sometimes I think like, okay, rather than just like go on and on about what's happening in America, maybe I should turn my sights to this, maybe stopping that stuff happening here because
Yeah,
it could very easily. There's enough people that think that way that
I
it's
think, yeah.
yeah.
And again, she was saying how we're so like we're almost the farthest right that we've been in like in ages, and yeah,
Hmm.
it is
Yeah.
scary.
There are some serious far right move. I mean, thankfully your far right is our left. So you're still
Yeah,
like have some basic protections, but it could move very quickly. So
yeah.
ugh.
Mm.
On that note,
But-
welcome to the But Why podcast, where we explore the human experience through a psychological lens by asking, but why? I'm Dr. Kristin.
And I'm Dr. Laura, and today we are exploring how advancements for women have repeatedly triggered efforts to hold them back.
Yep. AKA the story of women, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So
Sounds
fun.
tiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sums up life. How are you doing, Laura? On that note.
Feeling tired and ill, and I've got really red, and I've got this little like thing on my nose as well. Anywho's,
You've been sick for almost a week now. You're probably sick of it.
I am a little bit, but hey ho, it's fine. I learned a poem.
Oh, poetry.
Shall I tell you the poem that I
I'd
learned?
love to hear you read poetry to me.
Okay, so I was like, I'm going to memorize this poem. It's a very short poem, by the way. And because I got in that new pin.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it was, so I got this. I've also found that on Vinted, there are a lot of very good pins. If anybody is after a good pin, there are a lot of like Ghibli pins on there, which I thought was great.
Oh.
But anyway, so I got a Lord of the Rings pin. The pin is, I don't have it on me right now, but it's basically like a square, and it's like got a nice shirey sort of fieldy, tree-y background, and then it's got little silhouettes. I can never say that word. Silhouettes of Gandalf and Frodo like walking, and then it says on it, "The road goes ever on and on." And I was like, right, if I'm going to wear this pin, I need to know this poem. so I spent, where was it, like my Monday, like memorizing this poem, because I was ill as well. So I was like, I can't really like do much real work, so I'll memorize this poem. And then I looked into the poem and I realized that there are like 3 or 4 different versions of the poem. So then I had to decide which one I wanted to learn, because there's one, I think it originally was in The Hobbit, but then I was like, you know what, I think I want to know the Lord of the Rings one. And there's like 2 different versions in Lord of the Rings, one which Bilbo says and one which Frodo says. But I learned, well, they're kind of the same. I'll tell you the one that Bilbo says.
Okay.
You ready for my like poetry recitation?
I'm excited.
No, that's not the right word. That's like resuscitating somebody.
Well, how would you say
recitation?
I don't know. I'm just
reciting.
I'm just hoping this becomes like a poetry slam.
Oh no, not that intense. I probably forget it halfway. Okay, I'm just gonna start. See if I remember. So you've got to think as I'm saying this.
Oh, you've got your mindfulness meditation voice
I'm not
going.
reading it off, by the way. This is my general memory. But we've got to picture the Shire. We are in Lord of the Rings, and then it kind of makes more sense. Okay, so this goes. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say. That's it.
I love that. That's really nice, and I feel inspired.
So inspired by the poetry.
I love it. I don't have
you.
any poems for you though.
That is quite okay.
I just feel like if I read out poetry, it will still just feel like an attack.
Yeah, still angry. But they can be the best poems, right? When it sounds like you are being attacked. But anyway.
Yeah, sure.
But what I thought was fun, though, about learning this poem was that, like, on the first day I was, like, trying to learn it, I was like, I cannot remember this. And then it's so amazing when you then sleep, you consolidate the information into your like longer term memory. And then suddenly you're like, whoa, like I know it all. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I've never actually looked into like the research on that because I know that's a thing, right? But I've never actually explored it. You know how you're supposed to like study the day before a test and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They always say to you like you should always sleep over like staying up all night and like revising for something. You should always go to sleep because it will help you to consolidate the information.
Interesting. Yeah, those synapses, neural synapses firing off and reforming while you sleep.
Yeah, exactly. That's happening.
That's when all your brain does all of its repairing too, is when you get your deep sleep.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is so important to get that deep sleep, which is, according to my new Aura ring, not something I do very well.
Oh no! So have you got the proper size now?
Yeah, I've got it. I've been wearing it for 2 nights.
Okay, cool.
And the thing is, it said both days that I'm at optimal level, like 86 or 89. And then I'm just like, I don't feel that way. I feel really tired. I don't understand. Am I just wrong? Or is it just still, it's only been 2 days. It takes, what, a couple weeks to try and get to know your rhythm?
Yeah, I'd maybe give it a bit of time because I think also stress goes into that. So then when you go on to the, I don't know, I think it's like the readiness score or something, like daytime stress goes into that. So even if it says you've like slept really well, like your daytime stress score might be like really low, or high, however you want to see it. So I feel like that can come into it. But I do agree, like some days I'm like, it says I've slept really well, but I swear I woke up like 5 times in the night. Like, is that
was me
okay?
last night. I was like, I remember being awake multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes it like makes me feel a bit better, and it's like, actually it's not too bad if I do wake up. It's more like, am I getting back to sleep again, you know?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what perspectives it gives me on that kind of stuff, because obviously you're so unaware, especially like the alexithymia thing. Half the time I have no freaking clue what's going on inside my body. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I hope you like it. Sometimes though I get annoyed when I'm like, I'm so stressed, and then my Aura app is like, you've had a really restoring day, and I'm like, no, I have not. Like, it has not been restorative at all. But
they should be able to like ask you, like, does this reflect your experience? Yes or no, and integrate that into the data. But oh well, I'll tell them.
Totally. Yeah, because I wonder as well, like sometimes you can have it where you might experience that stressful, I don't know, event, experience or whatever, but then your body might not feel it until sometime after. So I wonder if that in some way reflects. But on the app you can add like tags. So even if it says you're not stressed, you can add like stressed or I don't know, sad or something. And then it will try and like pick up trends.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, well, anyone who wants an Aura ring or is considering getting one, I will keep you updated on my progress, because especially us, we're very data driven, so it's fun to explore that kind of stuff.
Totally. We can like start episodes by comparing our Aura data for the day.
Oh no, yeah, sure, let's do it. It'll be kind of fun.
Am I more ready than you? How ready are you?
What is your readiness right now? How ready
my
are
readiness
you for this podcast?
is 76, and it says it's good, but my resting heart rate is very bad.
What is it?
My age, well, it says it's 65 and it's red, so
my readiness is 89.
Oh, you are more ready than me.
I feel like that's not right at all, because I just literally took a vitamin C booster like shot thing before this, so I had energy.
Anyways,
did you see, are you a musical fan at all?
Some musicals I am a fan of.
Right. Okay. Do you like Les Mis?
Yes, I do.
And you know, like, the general background of Les Mis, right? The French Revolution and all that kind of stuff.
I've seen it in the theatre a long time ago, and I have watched the film. That's my knowledge.
Great. So, did you see at the governor's ball, which is at the White House, they asked like a bunch of the military like choir or whatever to sing for them, and they sang a song of angry men from Les Mis, which is literally about toppling a corrupt government. I was so happy.
Who were the people that were singing this? Sorry,
it was like one of the military choirs, so like actual military people singing it to the White House at the governor's ball.
Oh,
And like
wow.
my favorite thing about it is they were like, yeah, this is so great, because they were too freaking dumb to realize
They had no idea what was going on.
I don't
They
think so.
cheered.
Yeah, they
Encore.
were cheering. Like they're like, well done, thank you for singing to me. Yes, protest through art.
It's like,
My protest is through yelling, but that's
but
fine.
is it a protest if they don't even realize that they're being protested against?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really control people's perceptions of your protest. Not our fault they're dumb.
Yeah,
They will know because it's gone viral on the internet.
that is true.
So it'll be after when they look even dumber.
Like a sneak attack almost.
Yeah, a sneak protest.
Yeah, sneak protest.
And the funny thing is, though, it's one of the most well-known revolution songs on, at least in the Western world. And they probably went into it going like, they're going to know. They're going to know exactly what's happening.
We're going to get thrown out.
Yeah, we're going to get thrown out, or they're going to like yell at us, or at the very least, they're going to know what's happening. And they must have been like, nothing's happening? Do they not know? Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I suppose I should kick us off into our topic, because otherwise we could talk forever and we have a lot to cover. This reminds me of when I was lecturing on Monday this week. What is today? Wednesday. Yeah, a couple days ago.
I do know. How is it only Wednesday? How is that?
But I did the mindfulness act lecture, and I just had so much to fit in, and I said, sorry guys, I feel like I'm sprint talking at you guys, and like I just combined so much. Act and mindfulness is, as you guys kind of probably know, Laura is like, it's like right up there with socio-ecological model, Laura's like expertise and favorite thing. So Laura sent me loads of helpful stuff for developing this lecture. But then I also like had stuff from another lecture, and I was like, here, you go. Because they didn't just want me to do act, they wanted me to do like act and mindfulness approaches, like MBCT and stuff. I'm like, how am I supposed to cover this in 2 hours?
It's too much. You can't do all of it.
Yeah. So they were laughing.
What level students were they?
Masters.
Master students. Okay.
Anyway, I guess what I mean to say is I might be speed talking at you.
That is fine. I could now feel like I want to like talk about act and mindfulness, but I realize that is not the point of. That's not the point. So we're gonna no, don't go there.
No, Laura, no. Well, funny point. You want to go on a mindfulness tangent. Most of this is not very mindful. So,
okay.
There you go.
Let's all try and be mindful as we take in this horrific information.
Let's be very present with the horrific information.
Let us be, yes.
So, we've had, how do I frame this? We've had a number of comments on the internet about, do you want to leave your microphone on? Because it distracts me more when you turn it off.
Okay.
Sorry, Laura.
I feel like I'm going to be sniffing those like...
No, it blocks it out. I can ask it to block
Does
it out.
it?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay. Even if I cough?
Yeah, like I can ask it to do background noise, or or like block out your mic when those noises happen.
I'm going to be making loads of noises.
That's fine. Every time you turn off your mic, the normal like sizzle in the background, it's not really a sizzle, but I can just hear a difference.
I know what you mean.
It's just like nothing, and I'm like, I can just hear what I'm saying more. It's really distracting.
I'll try and no. Or I'll be like, I need a sneeze break.
yeah, quick sneeze break. Do 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 do.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we are going to talk about how basically every 2 steps women take forward, we end up taking at least 1 step back because of the backlash that happens. And a few comments online, like women have 90% more rights than men now, and all that kind of stuff online. Just like dumb stuff made me go, we need to talk about this. We've talked a little bit about sexism, stuff like that, but I think just a quick little history into maybe the past 125 to 28 years specifically.
So not that long.
Yeah. Or more actually, now that I'm looking at this, but would be useful. And so yeah, it's just like a very brief thing. If there's anything on here that you're like, oh, I'd like to learn more about that, you, Laura, or to the listeners, let us know and we'll cover things in more detail. So I'm going to start in the late 1800s, the 1880s, and with something that I find quite interesting called bicycle face. And it's something I wrote about in Amy and Jen's book that we covered last podcast, their Women's Stories book. And it's not the first thing, but it's like one of the more recent ones that's around women's voting. Like we did the witch trial episodes, which talked about propaganda and manipulating women and socializing women into certain roles. And when they extend out of those roles, they're punished either socially, physically, mentally, and things like that. So essentially, in that late 19th century, in the late 1800s, women started gaining a lot more independence. And so that's the suffrage movement was gaining a lot in the West. So think like UK, the USA, Australia. Women were starting to go to university. And along that time, bicycles had become really popular ways of getting about. And think of it this way. So now women were able to purchase a bicycle and go wherever they want, instead of doing like a horse and carriage. That's usually you have a driver and you're usually with a male person who's watching over what you're doing. It's for safety and heavy quotes, but also to monitor what you're doing. You're wearing your dresses and your gloves, you're getting into your carriage, you're going to your tea and you're going home, all quite tracked. Whereas when the bicycles started happening, women were like, oh, we can just go, right? And so that led to more and more women going to protest for voting. You know, the suffragette movement just like exploded as a result of cycles. And that also led to a lot of women preferring trousers over dresses and things like that. And so women were gaining so much progress just from this vehicle to get out and about outside of their kind of just normal communities. It's actually like a really good way of, you know, we talked about sharing women's stories. So it was a vehicle for women from other areas being able to meet and share each other's stories with one another. Yeah. So it's just like, you know, what we talked about in the witches episode is once women start congregating together, people start to get a little uncomfortable, right?
A little bit suspicious.
Yeah. Like, are you a witch or
are you really riding a bike?
Yeah. So basically this craze, which is kind of like what it was kind of called at the time, gave women this kind of new mobility, new freedom to travel more freely without male chaperones. This seems like something that's just like, oh, that happened. That's quite cool. No, crazy backlash. Crazy backlash. Dun, dun, dun. I know. So before I move on to the backlash, Laura, do you have any thoughts, opinions, or questions?
I was thinking, okay, most of the time as you were talking, I was thinking about my grandma actually. So she passed away about 10 years ago, but I was trying to think about where she would fall into in this time, because she was...
How old was she?
She was about, I think she was around 92, 94-ish when she died.
So she might fit into being born around the next stage that we cover, which is like the 20s.
Maybe. Okay, because she absolutely loved her bike.
Oh.
So she cycled everywhere. So it made me think of her, and then like wondering more about again, like this history behind that. And I was thinking, I wonder if this ever kind of impacted her. But that's kind of what I was thinking about. But also just that, like, because sometimes I'll talk to students about this when we're introducing like sexism in sport, and start with exploring like bicycle face, right? And you almost feel silly talking about it because people are like, what? So they started riding bikes, and it is exactly as you said, like seems like something that is so basic and such a positive thing, but actually it was like, whoa, like what's going on? We need to like stop this from happening. So it's very shocking, I think, in that sense.
It is, because it wasn't like they were fine for women to go on bicycles until they kind of put two and two together that, oh, they're actually mobilizing as a result of this freedom, right? And so that makes it almost more frustrating. And they were like, oh, are women getting pleasure from these bikes? This is a problem.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So like the backlash, what bicycle face is basically there was a collaborative effort from the media and doctors to
Male,
kind of,
probably mostly male doctors.
yeah. What do you mean? Probably it's the
I mean,
late the late
definitely.
1800s, yeah, early
Sorry,
1900s,
guys.
yeah.
What am I doing? I'm like censoring my language.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yep.
sorry.
Sorry.
They were all
Gotta,
men.
yeah. Not all men, Laura, but mostly. Actually, yes, they were. Um, and so basically, they came up with this disease, in heavy quotes, called bicycle face. They said that it would, because obviously women really only care about what they look like. That's where your real value is. So it's going to make your face look crazy. Basically, it's going to the physical exertion would create facial distortions, and they painted pictures in the media of women with like melting faces and like all this crazy stuff. And they also said, because, well, okay, well, if you're not pretty, well, at least you can give some babies to us, right? And so they also said like it's going to harm the female reproductive organs and cause like infertility or hysteria, my favorite, kind of fake thing.
Classic.
Yeah. And the kind of women wearing trousers and stuff like that caused a lot of controversy, like lots of ridicule, like women are dressing like men. It's just crazy. You know what I mean? So this was all an attempt to get women to kind of go back to their traditional ways of traveling and dressing. They wanted to reinforce these gender norms that women were just too fragile to engage in physical activity, and their places in the home where they're not going to get too overexerted. And this is something we're going to do an episode on, women's kind of the progression of women's sport, because there is a relation to this. Often sport is used as a vehicle to push them behind when there has been progress. So we will link to that. And again, it's like that idea of policing women's bodies and their behavior. So the reaction to the trousers reinforced that idea that even those minor deviations from femininity were just like not acceptable. And we can tie that into that benevolent and hostile sexism thing that we talked about, I think episode 2 even. So you can just see those things winding themselves around. So that's bicycle face, and that's just a very minor thing. Like women like riding bikes, and it helps progress the suffragette movement, and they wore pants. And people were like, nope, can't have that. Absolutely not. Doctors and media, let's do a propaganda campaign.
Yeah. And the list that they put out, so the list of like rules or something, like for if women are riding bikes, the list is like so long and is actually like quite funny because it is just so ridiculous, the things that they say in there around what like cycling is gonna do to women and what they should and should not do.
And it's almost like that list almost pretends like there's a choice in it, right? So it's pretending to give that autonomy, like, oh, I can do it as long as I follow this list. But really the list is too difficult to even engage in, so no one's going to do it. It's almost like voting rights in some places. They know what they're doing when they develop this kind of stuff.
It's crazy. Like, honestly, people listening, like, Google this list because you will realize how bizarre it is.
Yeah. I kind of want to Google it now, but I feel like I could go off on a tangent forever.
Should we just like read some funny ones out? Like, it's hard, I think, to like almost it, because you want to take this stuff seriously and be like, this is absolutely awful, but then the list is just so funny.
Yeah.
It's
like funny that it was so serious at the time as well.
Yeah. Oh, huge list of rules. Okay, so don't be a fright. That's one of them. How does one not be a fright?
I've never managed to do that. I'm always a fright.
I constantly. Oh wait, don't forget your tool bag. Okay, don't forget it. Don't boast of your long rides.
Oh, well, a woman can never be boastful, especially if she's riding for a long time.
Okay, don't refuse assistance up a hill. Love that.
Okay. I mean, fair, but...
Okay, this one's good. Don't chew gum. Exercise your jaws in private.
I don't even know what to say about that.
Oh, okay. The last one. Don't discuss bloomers with every man you know.
I'll try not to. Bloomers means trousers. Yeah. For anyone who
Anyways,
doesn't
please.
have like very specific 19th century knowledge, bloomers means
Yeah.
trousers. I'll try. Like, I love
Try
talking
my
about
best.
bloomers with men. That's like the first
Yeah.
thing I'm like, gotta tell you about these new bloomers I got.
Yeah. That's the main thing.
Oh, God.
But yeah, there's some examples of the fabulous list that women were provided with.
Lovely.
Mm.
Lovely. Well, I'll try not to be a fright, but I can't promise
Please.
anything.
Please.
Please.
Tell the witches,
Yeah,
don't be afraid.
Don't be a fright. Oh my God. Oh my God. We could probably link so much of this. That's the issue.
Yeah.
So the next two, I'm going to kind of link in together and kind of go through both at the same time because they're quite linked. And I'll probably focus on more, like certain areas more than others. And these two I'll link together because the next one is a biggie. So 2 and 3. So 2 is women's suffrage and the anti-suffragette movement. So historical context is women had been fighting for voting rights for decades, like from bicycle face onwards, and loads of major suffrage organizations formed in the US and Europe in the late 19th century, early 20th. The movements made some slow gains. So New Zealand granted women the right to vote in 1893, Australia in 1902, Finland 1906, and the UK partial voting rights in 1918. So US isn't quite there yet in what we're talking about. And so there was a lot of opposition to women's suffrage by women. This anti-suffrage movement was largely run by women, so internalized misogyny like crazy. And they were arguing that only educated people can vote, so women shouldn't be allowed to vote because they're too uneducated and their place is in the home. But women weren't allowed largely to go to school. So that was one major thing. They led major attacks against suffragettes. Okay, and from there, and
groups
so
of women,
groups
of women were attacking suffrage. Wow,
it was men too, but they pretty much tried for the most part to use the tool of women against women, feeling like it might have more validity coming from women to say you should be in the home. That's a tool that's used throughout this whole process.
Yeah, it's interesting how that I think even feeds so much into our society and like cultures today with like pitting women against women and you know, it's like almost still feels like something we need to remind each other about, to like celebrate other women rather than seeing each other as threats, you know?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's in group 101. It's pit the out group against each other and however way you can, and that'll just solidify your own power. You don't even have to do that much work, you know? And so alongside this, part of the attack was propaganda, of course. So suffragettes were portrayed as ugly and unfeminine. I link this a lot back to the witch trials when they, you know, portray witches as like have like warts all over their face, or, you know, just like as the old hag in heavy quotes, things like that. So political cartoons were mocking suffragettes as man-hating spinsters. So they really were trying to discourage women from joining the movement by saying, like, if you become a suffragette, and nowadays it's feminist, you're going to become too ugly to find a husband, which obviously, what do we all want in life? It is a husband. And the idea was, okay, it's politically irresponsible to let women vote. So obviously women had no rights to vote in the countries they were living in until about 100 to 120 years ago, meaning that most laws are not designed for them. And even after gaining the right to vote, honestly, like even the people that were allowed to vote legally still faced a lot of just disenfranchisement. So we had that opposition to women's voting through pretty much women by arguing that their own gender was too dumb and uneducated to vote. And that was supported by the man-run propaganda machine. You look so mad.
Can you imagine like saying that? Like, no, Like, we women, we are not smart enough to vote. Don't let us do it. Like, can you
Yeah.
imagine that?
It's, yeah. I would not like to have a say in my own fate. It's just when people
It,
are so socialized that something is the way it is. I mean, we see it all over the place now. It's
mm,
really, it can lead to that cognitive dissonance, and that cognitive dissonance can get quite uncomfortable, and they'll take that out on the other person. It's probably a lot of jealousy of the freedom these women were experiencing, even.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So after that, slightly after, women in America got the right to vote in 1920, and this was just after World War One. Some women went to work while the men went off to war, and so after World War One and women getting these rights to vote, the flapper movement happened, and so that's that kind of like 1920 to 1930 kind of era. And so that flapper movement kind of represented that rejection of traditional feminine roles. So women like chopped off their hair, they wore less restrictive clothing, more, God, I can't talk right now, more revealing clothing. They drank in public, they kind of were a bit more sexually free. And just something that I want to note real quick is this is a really quick description of all these events. And we don't want to erase intersectional approaches in Black feminism because they arguably have done a lot more work than white feminism, and has roots back to like at least the 1800s. So I just want to note that the kind of like the experience of the flapper movement and women's kind of like short lived, really 10 years experiences of some greater freedoms were really, really, really highly dependent on your race and privilege more broadly. So maybe just apply that point throughout this whole discussion is, you know, there is an intersectional effect on your experience as a woman. And a lot of what we're going to talk about, and like next, we're going to talk about the traditional 50s housewife. You know, that was obviously propagandized to be very white. And a lot of, because the civil rights movement hadn't happened yet, a lot of Black women, that wasn't even an option. So just wanted to chuck that in there because a lot of really important and deep work was done, but I'm not getting too specific into any one person's work. I'm just kind of doing an outline. So I just wanted to note that. Anyway, the backlash of this broader flasher movement was like a kind of.
Did you say flasher?
What did I say?
I thought you said flasher. The flasher movement.
Flasher.
Like,
I think it might have said flasher. Yeah, it's just that movement of women going around flashing people.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yes, I meant flapper, I think. There was a lot of backlash to that, so it kind of took the stage as more of like a moral panic than anything, similar almost to the voting rights backlash. So religious and conservative groups, so that's men and women, attacked flappers or flashers, probably even more so, for rejecting those traditional gender roles. They were again portrayed as reckless and immoral people, like how dare you. Prohibition happened very soon after this moral degradation of the flappers. And so there was just like this pressure to go back to that domestic life.
Okay,
it's not as intense as the next stage for after World War II, but it's just like a taste of what we're about to get, of like workplace exclusion, men come back from the war, women are being immoral by existing, stuff like that.
I was going to, just to clarify, so would you say that this kind of, the flapper movement was like empowering women? This was something that was kind of allowing them to, yeah, move away from those gender norms and sort of do something for themselves?
Yeah, because like they literally, the flapper style was short, chopped off hair. It was revealing clothing. It was heels. It was all about dancing in ways that were considered like very inappropriate, showing some leg.
You know what I'm thinking about? I'm like,
what?
I don't know if I'm going to say this properly, but for those of you who have seen The Handmaid's Tale, right? So you know when they go out of the like the city and the men like take all of like women like to these like they're like flapper bars, really,
Mm-hmm.
like, aren't they? I don't know if that's the right term, but all of the women are like made to dress up in this kind of flapper sort of style. And
Mm-hmm.
it almost makes me feel like that is put in there because it's almost like taking away that, if this is representing freedom of women, then that's almost like, I guess, the patriarchy then taking that movement and actually making it something that is for them rather than for women.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I'm sure in this flapper movement, there was an element of like just wanting to show off the woman that was there. There's still that, like, oh, you gotta have woman on your arm, blah, blah, blah. But there was that choice by women to dress edgy and all that kind of stuff. Whereas, like you say, in The Handmaid's Tale, that autonomy is just gone. They don't have any choice. So that's such a
Mm.
cool, interesting. I wonder if Margaret Atwood thought about that. I wouldn't be
Mm.
surprised because she took all of her stuff from actual stuff that has happened in the past.
Yeah.
So I wonder. That's a really interesting point. So the reason I kind of rushed through that is this next one. This is like more well known, but also like crazy. So as we know, during World War II, loads and loads of men went to war because women weren't allowed to be in war, and women entered the workforce in mass. Think like the Rosie the Riveter vibes. Like we can do it with the
What's that? Oh,
like,
right, I see.
oh,
Yes.
you know,
Okay.
like you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it
With
was
like
in,
the like
yeah, the
hair
headband and
thing
the
and like the
bicep, but like we,
checkered shirt and
yes,
stuff. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I think like 6 million women, I think in the US, I would need to clarify, went to work. 6 million women went from being in the household to working in like corporate and industrial jobs, which is just like a very quick turnaround from doing domestic labor to this. They started to enjoy it. It proved that they were very capable of doing it for years on end. It opened up other jobs. So you started seeing like more housekeeping jobs and things like that because women were going into work, and it just kind of changed the job market a little bit. And women just experienced as well like a bit of freedom without loads of men around all the time oppressing them and controlling their behaviors. And so it was just like a period of time during like a really horrific time in life where, which is just like, it sucks that it took such a horrific thing for women to kind of progress a little bit. However, did they really progress? Because the GI Bill in the US, so in 1944, provided loads of benefits to the returning soldiers, which, you know what, that's great. You need to know that you can have a job to come back to. But it was like, okay, women, get out of our jobs now. Media and government messaging after the war encouraged women to go back to their home and focus on the family, despite the media beforehand saying, women, you got to get in there, go support the country by getting to work. I think more women went back to the home, lost their jobs after this than had gone into it for this, if that makes sense. So there had been more women working before this kind of World War II mass amount of women going in than after. So
they're like one step forward, two step back thing is very much happening
yeah,
here.
exactly. Yeah. Because after World War One, there was some backlash and there was some like get back into the kitchen, but it wasn't like crazy, crazy. This backlash was actually like, no, we can't tolerate this as a society. It was coming from the government, it was coming from the general media. So like if you're looking at the media, propaganda has a massive role in all of this, from the witch trials to Bicycle Face to the 50s housewife. So TV shows kind of like, you know, Leave It to Beaver, Father's Knows Best, that just really idealize that stay-at-home motherhood vibe.
I have never heard of any of those TV shows.
Oh no, I don't know any of your British like 50s like TV shows.
I don't know either. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. I wouldn't know them off the top of my head. The craziest part about this, so there's this propaganda that if you don't fit in to this, then you're not worth anything, right? Have you ever seen that like, was it a Vogue thing, Vogue diet from like 1955 or something, and it was like the women's diet like that they should be doing?
Yes. There's something strange about an egg, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
So it's like for breakfast, you have a glass of, I think it's Pinot Grigio and an egg, like one hard boiled egg.
Oh
And then
yeah.
for lunch, I think you have a glass of Pinot Grigio and maybe part of a sirloin steak or nothing. And then for dinner, you have either the full steak or the rest of your steak and the last of the bottle of wine, which is like 2 glasses of wine.
Perfect.
Yeah. And they're
That's
like,
the life.
they're
Isn't it?
like, this will make you skinny. Like,
Oh my
and that's
gosh.
another big thing that I've been looking into a lot recently. Is I read somewhere earlier this year that basically said every time there is a movement of women gaining progress, fashion starts centering around women's thinness instead of body's positivity. So if you look around,
Say that again. When what?
when women start demonstrating some very obvious progress, some like bigger leaps forward, fashion and beauty starts to center around thinness. So if you think about like 2010s, before the Me Too movement, fashion and beauty was very Kardashian centric, very curvy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the body positivity movement started as well.
Yeah.
Now fashion is very Ozempic. Even the Kardashians are all like on that, and everyone's, even who already was very skinny, is talking about how skinny they are and just look like waifs. And actually, this makes me think, because that was a 50s thing too. Like, okay, well, you've been doing these industrial jobs, gaining all these muscles. Now we want you to have a bottle of wine and a steak on one egg all day, and you have to be a stick. And yeah, there's a lot of body shaming as well in the 50s.
Yeah. And why do you think that we're kind of moving back to that sort of like thinness as like beauty?
Well, it also happened in the 90s with the Kate Moss kind of stuff as well, right after, what would I call it, like the backlash against second wave feminism, really, right before we enter the third wave of feminism. It's a backlash against the kind of Roe v. Wade and all these women's rights that were gained in 1980s. The 90s was all thinness. So I haven't like properly researched it, but it's definitely a trend.
That's so interesting. So like a backlash again against this like freedom, or this well, I guess women taking back freedom over their bodies is then, I don't know what it is that's kind of making that happen, but it is like getting put back in that box in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an exertion of control, because I don't even know if it's conscious. I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but it's just like, well, what else are women's bodies for if not to be looked at and consumed, or, you know, provide labor, whether that's domestic or childcare, childbirth, things like that. And that's just like a very patriarchal idea. So that just made me kind of think of that. So like a kind of funny story, like, ooh, Vogue printed this, but then like, oh wait.
Yeah. No.
Leave it to me. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have a bowl of mac and cheese out after this. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
I have a chocolate croissant, so I might have.
Now, would Amy call it a chocolate croissant? That's the question.
Oh, no, sorry. It's no, it is a pain au chocolat. Yeah.
Amy has very strong opinions about what a chocolate croissant is.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Now I'm hungry. This happens 2 episodes in a row now. And so one of the many really sad things that happened to these women that were forced back into these domestic labor jobs is they've just gone from working, like having more meaning and fulfillment, to basically childcare. But a lot of them had kids, and the kids were already in school, and their husbands were working in the cities. Like, what do you do all day? Like, you know, they were all just so unhappy. There's a mental health crisis, so unfulfilled. And this started the medicalization of women's happiness that we still see today, in misdiagnosing women with like mood disorders when actually they might be neurodivergent or have actual trauma they need to get through and stuff like that. So this kind of housewife dissatisfaction was treated as a medical problem, not as an issue that should be explored more. So like, you are medically wrong if you don't want to be a wife and a mother only. Like it's that. And so what they did is they started prescribing Mother's Little Helper, which is essentially like a tranquilizer. And over a third of,
No.
yeah, and
Oh my
there were
God.
a lot of lobotomies as well. And over a third of American women, housewives, American housewives, I should say, not women, were on these drugs. And so they were just like
Wow.
zonked out in their house with their bottle of Pinot Grigio and their steak all day.
And the
Like,
egg, the
and the egg,
single
their single
boiled
egg that they
egg.
were allowed to make.
Wow.
So these women were just like, their mental health plummeted. No one cared. They would send them to, this is where a lot of the problems in psychology come from. A lot of it started when these like zonked out women were going and they would infantilize them and treat their problems like they weren't real. And it was just crazy and it's really sad. And then in the 60s, you start to see like this change a little bit, the kind of free love movement. You see people starting to almost like what happened in the 20s with the flapper movement, but this is concerts and music and flare jeans. And you see a lot more once that starts happening and there's more freedom, women start fighting for more rights. So in the 60s and 16s and 17s, the 60s and 70s, we had some major victories. So we had in the States that we had Roe v. Wade, which is protection for like freedom of choice for your body. We had Title IX, which protects women in sports. We had the push for the Equal Rights Amendment, which was introduced in the 20s and it's still not ratified today. It's crazy. And so a lot of women also entered the workforce, which kind of challenged those traditional gender roles that we can't be in there, even though we were there like 20 years before, but that's fine. As backlash to that, there was a lot of workplace discrimination, no equal pay, gender wage gap was like really entrenched. There was no financial independence. There were no legal protections. So you still couldn't get a bank account. There was no protections against any kind of workplace discrimination. And media also, this is when like that term feminist started coming in, right? And again, they kept, I suppose, demonizing, as they did with the witches, feminists. So women or feminists are unhappy. They're very anti-man. They're aggressive. They're extreme. It's basically still what people think of as feminist, which is really sad. And it kind of kicked off those mommy wars, I suppose, which made kind of tried to shame working mothers into, or shame them for not staying home, creating that tension, creating again that kind of like woman versus woman situation where it's like the women who want to stay home and have a family, that's great. And also the women who want to go to work and have a family or not, that's also great. That's what feminism is. But people created in the media that tension to make it easier. So that's kind of like the 60s through to maybe almost like 2000-ish.
And would you say that like similar things were happening in like the UK as well? So in terms of the like, like prescribing like Valium and stuff, and then the differences in kind of rights and so on?
The differences in rights, the return to domestic life and things like that, yes. I don't think you guys had the medicalization aspect of it at the same level we did because our pharmaceutical industry is crazy and it was back then too. For you guys, it was more of a drinking issue. So like it was more alcohol based rather than prescription drugs. But I think the mental health still absolutely plummeted. And you guys have very similar trajectory as us to like when rights are kind of established, or you're either like a few years ahead or we'll do things a couple of years ahead, but we're pretty much equal on that. It's pretty like, if you're looking at like Western white women, pretty consistent. And also, if you're looking at like the 60s through the 90s, at the same time, we have the civil rights movement happening as well. So there's a lot of social change happening for the very established and privileged white dude. He's probably starting to get a little uncomfortable, which is silly, but they are, because in the outlook of the patriarchy, everything's quite hierarchical, right? So if you're not at the top of the hierarchy, then you're at the bottom, and that means you're going to be kept punched down, right? You're going to be stomped on. Whereas that's not necessarily how all systems work. A non-patriarchal system might work as a circle where we're all equal, where You know, you might still have some hierarchy, but there's no punishment for being at the bottom, things like that. So it's really funny to me when men imagine like what feminism wants to be is just reverse patriarchy, when that's just not it. We just want like equity for everyone. You know what I mean? So you've got this period of massive social change, and then we enter the modern era that you and I have to deal with.
Yay!
Woo! Where we have the internet fueling a shit
Oh,
show.
yeah.
Yeah. Like I used to think until I like noticed it, that we were like, oh, we're so lucky to be around now. It's amazing. And I recognize that these people have always probably been around, but now they have the freedom to like literally threaten to murder or assault you on the internet on a daily basis. And so that's basically where we are now. So if we go from like 2010s to about now in 2025, we had, like I said, that kind of like little step back, little kind of like 90s, early 2000s. Like, think about how problematic TV in the early 2000s was. It was like so gross. And then in the 2010s, we had like the Me Too movement in 2017, kind of more modern third wave feminism that's more intersectional, some activism stuff, and more, I think so. This is where social media helped. We had some more awareness of the gender inequity that happened, and people started to speak up about it. People who didn't have a microphone before like Instagram and TikTok and all that kind of stuff started to speak up about their oppression, whether that be gender or race or, you know, socioeconomic status. And that was great for a little bit until like 5 seconds later, the backlash just intensified like crazy online. And this has escalated so quickly that, like in 2016, when Trump was elected, you wouldn't necessarily even think about some of the stuff he's doing now. And then here we are 8 years later, and it's just like a no-brainer for half the country to take away people's rights. The internet just makes everything happen so fast. So right now we're seeing the rise of tradwives. Have you seen tradwife stuff online?
No.
Oh my God. I cannot believe that. No, I'm very happy for you. I always get really excited.
Okay.
I get really like happy for your experiences when I come across something that like when you didn't really know who Andrew Tate was. I'm like so jealous.
Oh, yeah. What is it? What is...
How do I describe? So basically, it's like these online communities and influencers that glorify kind of that 1950s ideal for women. So like, I don't know why I would, they all talk like this. I don't know why I would leave the house. Like they call this oppression, and they're like making a homemade oatmeal.
Oh, no.
And most of the actual influencers are people that are married to very rich people and can afford to spend, I mean, they are working because they're influencers, and filming all this shit, doing all this stuff is a full-time job, but they have the time to make cocoa. Not powdered cocoa, actual cocoa granules, and like make cereal and like all this kind of stuff. And it's like basically trying to say like, you guys are being dramatic by saying there's any form of oppression. We are meant to be in the kitchen. So that's massively risen online alongside the incel, which is the involuntary celibate, and just kind of like hyper masculine Andrew Tate people that think that women need to be in the kitchen. I see videos of all day, every day, of men going like, well, women are too stupid. Why would I even want to have a conversation with them? And I'm like, oh, you're putting this online, dude.
Wow.
And they've always been there. They just say it now because they have platforms from idiots.
That's the scary thing, is like they have a voice and there are people who are listening and taking that stuff seriously. Like we can watch it and almost like laugh about it in a way because it's so ridiculous. But there are people who will be ultimately like manipulated by that and will lean on that.
Not only do they lean on it, they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars to take these courses on how to be these kinds of men.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really bad. And this, you know what? It all started just because, not all started, but these courses, because of that hustle culture. They realize they can take advantage of a vulnerable group of men who are probably a bit lonely, haven't maybe upped their social skills to meet with how women are today. That male loneliness like epidemic that keeps being blamed on women is just because men haven't evolved with with society. Really, everyone's leaving them behind because so many of them aren't forming those bonds, those social things. Like they're afraid to hug their own friends. They're not building that community, so people are taking advantage of them. But that just makes it more dangerous for women and other groups. So whether that be physically, so violence and harassment against women online and in person has gone up significantly. There's been, well, at least right now in the US, not here yet in the UK, but there's been the rollback of women's rights. So Roe v. Wade, which is right to choose, was overturned a few years ago. Our reproductive rights are just completely reduced in so many places. This year, Trump took back or rolled back the executive order that prohibited workplace discrimination based on like protected characteristics such as gender, other characteristics as well. And that's where all this like anti-woke DEI stuff is coming from. And this has led to like the subsequent erasure of women in all these federal agencies. So those people that say, well, I haven't seen it trickle down yet to my life experience, like, well, do you work in the federal government? No. Okay, it's going to take a little while, right? Whereas the people working in the federal government, they've completely gotten rid of anyone who is either covering DEI or EDI if you're in the UK, and they've just gotten rid of so many people of protected characteristics. People don't realize how important DEI is. DEI is veteran protection. It's ageist protection. It's gender. It's race. It's sexual identity. And I think 30,000 people have been fired in the government.
The woman I was talking about to you earlier, so Chantel, I keep forgetting her last name, but she was kind of talking about the kind of EDI or DEI sort of changes, and how that has, in terms of, I suppose, employment, has the worst impact on like white women, because there are so many white women who are employed in those spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We're privileged enough to be in these spaces like you and I are. But we would probably be the first to go. I've seen that quite a few times by Black content creators who are experts in the topic as well. So it's interesting that she said that as well. Like, just looking at the list. So if you guys, a lot of people probably don't kind of follow me on social media, but I did a video a couple weeks ago about the National Science Foundation banning certain supposed DEI terms from either obtaining a grant, or if you've had a grant, if you have these terms, you'll not receive funding anymore. The NSF gives 30% of research funding in the whole country. So any term to do with gender, you can't say female, you can't say Black, you can't say bias.
What can you say?
Anything that, the word male isn't on there, weirdly enough.
What is the prize?
I know. So that's where we are now, and I feel like I've just sprinted through it all, and I'm sorry. I feel like you didn't even talk that much, Laura.
I felt like I did.
I feel like I need you to say more. Do more poetry for us.
More poetry. That's the only poem that I learned. I'll try and do more. But no, I think it's nice, because I think it's nice to kind of get the almost, because obviously there's so much, like you said, that you could dig into, like more specifically, but I think it's nice to almost like zoom out and get that like overall picture of, I suppose, the journey that we've kind of been through. Like you say, where has the progress been made, but then where have we been like knocked back again, and then how are things almost repeating themselves again now. So yeah,
and it's gonna always repeat itself if we're under patriarchy. It's just that's the only option, right? So it's just going to be a never-ending cycle that we have to deal with until it's over. And yeah, we'll see. I don't even I'm like, can I say something positive? There are some people that think that people are responding so vitriolically because it's the breaking point of that system, but I'm not as like knowing the cycles that have happened throughout history, and that basically this has happened constantly, I don't really think that's the case, but we'll see. That'd be nice. Could you imagine if we were alive to see the fall of the patriarchy? I would throw so many parties.
You would. You would. It'd be so interesting, wouldn't it? Like, even how that comes about, how things change, what things look like, if things do change, or if it ends up just being, I don't know, some other sort of mess. Who knows?
Yeah. The issue is, for the patriarchy to die, it would likely just have to implode, because there's a reason there are no matriarchal societies left, or there are a couple, but most of them were destroyed because they're not violent societies. And they were destroyed by people that just had loads of weapons and no empathy within like days of infiltration. So like, do you destroy patriarchy with a similar system and then I don't know.
It's making me think of Lagertha from Vikings and how, you know, like she went and like became Earl, but then the guys basically just kept taking advantage of it. I mean, she would kill them to her favor.
Yeah, I love her.
Like, but yeah.
Yeah.
We need to be more like Lagertha. Maybe.
That's my goal. That's my life goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well.
So shall we finish with the questions to reflect
do
on?
it. Yes.
Do you want me to do reflections?
Yes, I feel like we need your relaxing voice.
My snotty blocked up
You don't
voice.
sound that bad. You sound
good. Not?
No.
Maybe it's just because like my ears are so blocked that I sound strange to myself.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's it. Anywho's, so things to reflect on. So I suppose we can all kind of think about if there's areas in our life or within the communities that we're in where we're seeing backlash to women's progress. Even that if that's in like online spaces, you know, can we kind of identify and be aware of them? And then what are some kind of small acts of feminism or like micro feminist acts that we might be able to take part in? I
want to hear yours.
I made one of my male colleagues go out of the lift first, even though they told me to go. I was like, no, you go.
And did you do it like that? No.
Maybe not quite like that.
I like to edit my emails to sound as much like a man as like, you know, not do the like, hi, how are you? I am nice, but also know what I'm doing. I'm just like, here's what I want. This is what I need by this date.
Oh my gosh, I can't do that.
Yeah,
that gives me anxiety. Maybe I need to try and do that more. Yeah, I had that someone who emailed me. It must have been a week or so ago. And they referred to me as Miss, and one of my male colleagues, who's the same kind of level as me, as Professor. And that's just crazy, isn't it? That you're the same level, but as a woman, you're Miss, but as a man, you're Professor. And it, yeah, again, it's like, and I think it is kind of calling those things out. So I did reply and kind of call it out.
What did you end up saying?
I can't remember. I think it was just something not as intense as you would have done, Kristin. I think it was like something like, in future correspondence, please recognise that we are both like doctor titles.
That's good. Yeah. Well, because not only did he make your colleague a professor, but he took away any title that you had.
It was a woman.
Oh, really?
Who sent the email? It was a woman.
God. Oh my God. So not only did she do that, which, yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about that anyway. But she also applied your potential relationship to a man to your title, instead of thinking that you could have any title that's earned, like doctor. Like, don't get me started about how women have to earn titles that don't relate them to a man, versus a man just being like Mr. If it's Mr. somebody, you don't know if they're married or not, that's fine. If it's Miss, Mrs., Miss, like things like that, that just tells you a woman's relationship to a man. So she just went straight to like, well, you're clearly an unmarried woman.
You are clearly single. Like, wow, thank you.
Oh God. Oh, well, life.
There we go.
Yeah.
And on that.
Thank you all for listening. As usual, we probably have more questions than answers and probably more rage, but we enjoyed exploring a brief history of women's progress on today's episode. Did this leave you guys with any questions, any areas you want us to further explore? Please comment and let us know. We'd also love to know if you have any other topics you want us to explore, so get in touch. Please make sure to like, follow, or engage however your platform allows, and tell your friends if you have them.
If not, sorry.
If not, that's okay. We can be your friends.
Yeah.
You can find us on various social media platforms. The link is in the bio of our But Why Instagram and the show notes. And remember, the first step to understanding is asking, but why?
Yay.